before the end of the administration of Philippine President Benigno Aquino. Not his first time in the palace, however. You know, he came in and lived in Arlegui, and Ferdinand Marcos, and of course is that in the last elections, just about with us today to talk about this. Is very, I think, a time interesting times for the Filipino. You know how well Marcos did.
When he became the front, seemed to be such an impossibility, but those opposed to him were fragmented. Perhaps we should have paid attention to their long-running campaign. The revisionist, there is a new generation that never experienced information. No, and this is something else. But you have instant access to everything. Perhaps it's so different information.
Yes.
Even the technology used now. We should have done a better job in detriment of our people.
Media elections. I mean, what is Marcos doing?
So, perhaps that's a new, you know, when the first time I ran, because the house-to-house I tend to go to rallies. Then you have another group of people who are in the rallies. Then there are people who are working you cannot catch at home and you cannot catch in the rally. Therefore, you have to go through media. Social media is another way of getting to your constituencies.
Yes.
And like any other tool, can be used for good or for bad. Sorry.
It's okay. Please grab a drink of water.
I'm talking too much, I guess.
No, it's okay. It's okay. So you were saying social media can be used for good or for
like
bad,
any other
right?
tool.
Like any other tool. The fact, I guess, any lessons from the fact that drink water first. Again, the two candidates who used social media extremely well were Senator Marcos and Duterte. What was the biggest lesson you learned in the loss of Mar Rojas in these elections?
We're still trying to discern all of the lessons to it. No? Perhaps in a sense, not to take away anything from the success of the campaigns that actually won, they were able to really differentiate themselves from, I guess, the pack. But on the other hand, I think we can say that you know, we campaigned. I had to run the country whilst campaigning also.
Yes.
From number 4 in the survey to number 2 is, I think, nothing to be ashamed about. No? Perhaps there should have been a better effort somewhere earlier, and might have resulted in a difference. Let me just give you a specific example. In the province, there is no place in the country that I am afraid to go to because we neglected them. We can point to multiples, for instance, in terms of infrastructure budgets that have been given to every place in the country. We can talk about multiples of the Matuwid Pamilya families,
yes.
No? Yes. And so many other achievements, no? And but the thing is, how do you translate it to every individual to say, look, we created all of this together. Look, this is the stepping stone towards the next level.
Right.
You know, we had to, everything that has been done had the hindrances and the baggage that of the actions or lack of actions of those that came before us. We had to contend with. We created a lot of the right seeds, and it's for you to nurture. So now, to be able to do that, there was another interviewer. I guess that's the best way to put it. She said, you had the courage to invest long-term in education, something that doesn't produce results in the next quarter.
Yes.
No? And they asked, why did you do that?
Yes.
And I said, and another way of asking that question is, I promised kung walang corruption, you know, kung walang there's no corruption, there will be no poor people. Kung walang corrupt, walang mahirap. Bakit raw may mahirap pa ngayon? So I had to ask the people who asked me that. It's becoming a stock question. You know,
I won't ask that.
I said, how do you actually become how do you become rich? If yesterday you were poor, how do you become rich today?
Yeah.
Unless you steal. No? So you actually have to capacity. The other portion of that is it has to trickle down. That's why we abandoned trickle down. The whole idea is capacitate them so that they can join the economic growth at the earliest possible time. And you can see that in the 9 million course graduates of TESDA.
Right.
You can see that in the elimination of the backlog, for instance, in classrooms, the hiring of so many teachers, something to the tune of about 145,000. Can I just highlight that 185,000 classrooms finished by, I think, the first quarter of next year, to include areas where land is scarce, that you have to have multi-story buildings already, which increases the cost dramatically. From a budget that usually and traditionally can support something like 8,000 classrooms per year. By the 6 years, it's 48,000. We will build 185,000. So you take care of the K-12 needs. You take care of the 30 and 40-year-old, obsolete structures, and you rebuild all of those that were devastated by typhoons or being moved to better locations, less risky. So, again, how do you say we're on the right track when you cannot demonstrate results for those who look at it on a very short-term basis?
Right. So you're saying you were building for the long haul. I mean,
Yes.
you're
We didn't, did our growth come from exploiting on a pure basis just the natural resources, being a commodities exporter? And look what has happened on those countries that are primary commodity export-driven economies, and
Right.
where they are now.
right. Ask you before we go into the nuts and bolts of what you actually accomplished. Very few people join the ranks of world leaders. I mean, how did having the presidency for 6 years, how did that change you as a man? How did it shape you as a leader?
Well, thank you for asking that question. My mother used to say that the one thing I lacked was my willingness to travel, by being exposed to a lot of different cultures, I guess. No? And she felt that that was such a necessary skill. No? Just to, I guess, to live in this new age where the world is getting smaller and smaller. But somehow I felt I was most content being in the Philippines. Okay? So here I am. I have to suddenly deal with a lot of world leaders. I have to understand where they're coming from, and in an effort to find the common ground so we can move forward. I'm told, for instance, shall we say, a lot of times in the early part, I felt like they were talking to me because they had to talk to me as opposed to they wanted to talk to me. And in one, I won't name the leader, no? But the thing was, I think the first time I met him, he's from the other hemisphere. The first time I met him, he was kind of, I think he was delivering a soft key sermon. And transformation, say 4 years, 5 years later, he is earnestly asking us to visit his country on a state visit. Now, initially, there were problems attributed to my predecessor in terms of the credibility of the Philippines, especially in ASEAN. To now, where we have ASEAN listening to us and trusting us that we will stand by our words on the issues that affect us commonly. And so, I think I've grown as a person. I hope I press that our causes are legitimate, and we are a worthwhile partner, and we really are sincere when we say that when we look at growth, we want growth not on a one-sided basis, but on a multidimensional basis for all parties concerned.
Aside from the numbers, though, how were you changed by the presidency?
When I used to hear people say, it's such an honor to serve the people, now that I had to face so many challenges, and all along the route, perhaps not in particular snapshots, but at the end, I could always count on our people to fully support whatever I had to do. Really made me feel in a very, very palpable manner what it means. When you say that phrase, it really is an honor to serve. Really, there seemed to be no challenge that couldn't be surmounted given that trust and that support from our countrymen.
For a long time, you did have the majority, that you were one of the most popular presidents.
One of the April surveys
Still says you.
I had something like 10 percentage points more than when I got, well, I'm comparing, I got 42% of the vote, roughly. No? And I had an approval rating of 52%. So I'd like to say I even gained at the end of the term from the numbers that were most optimistic.
So if you were to give yourself a grade,
I wouldn't do that. Goes against my cultural beliefs of Tagalog, nagtata sa sarili bangko.
how did you do as president? What were the highs? What were the lows?
The highs and the lows. Well, the highs, of course, a lot in the economic sphere.
Yes.
When we talk about, for instance, even dealing with natural disasters like typhoons, we get visited by 20 a year.
Yeah.
From a point of, one of the very first typhoons under my watch, Pag-asa misdirected us. They told us it was going to go to Aurora and actually went to Southern Tagalog.
Yeah,
No? To now, when a Pag-asa that has credibility, I really like that phrase, sa Pag-asa may pag-asa na ngayon. but really, no, when we started out typhoons, normally it will just be the wind. Now, Pag-asa is able to tell us the strength of the wind, the amount of rainfall, the actual track of the typhoon, the intensity in these particular areas that will be hit. Then you're confident that the DSWD is ready, that the Office of Civil Defense and the NDRRMC are functional, that they actually talk to each other, and that there's coordination. That's one of the highs. PhilHealth, no? From anywhere 47 to 51% dependent on whether it was enrollees, no? Dependent on whether or not it was an election year, to PhilHealth claims 93 million members at this point in time. The 4.6 million households that are being assisted, no? That I was explaining it to my writers and my researchers. If your only capacity is to do menial work, no, then chances are you will not be just on your own. You will not be able to improve the lot of your children, and they will in turn become subject again to menial work only, or that's the only possibility. Now you have an increasing workforce that has no skills, going after the limited jobs brings about more and more deterioration as the generations go. They actually have a term for that, intergenerational poverty.
Yes.
And I think we are in this, we are breaking that vicious cycle and turning it into a virtuous cycle. I keep pointing out, for instance, in TESDA, when they train somebody to participate in the BPO, the cost to train is recouped by government in the first tax that is paid by this worker that was given that opportunity. So even on a yearly thing, you have the wherewithal to continue the program and afford more and more people that opportunity. Of course, Joel Villanueva keeps on teasing me that a lot of their graduates make multiples of my salary within 6 months after graduation.
Joel Villanueva did very well in the Senate. He was the surprise there. So you've you've stated this. You've been looking at the fundamentals and you're working at the fundamentals. But where could you have done better?
The communication aspect of it. For instance, when Joel was wanted to run in 2013, I said, shouldn't we build, your survey numbers are like this. Don't you think you'd better have a base? Think about TESDA and your ability to be able to really affect change, a palpable change in the people. Then he was a bit disappointed, but then he agreed.
Yes.
And he devoted so much energy into it. And again, 9 million course graduates.
He did very well, and we saw it in the elections.
So, and how many actually realized it? Perhaps in the campaign period itself.
Yes.
When you talk about, let me give you a for instance. There's a figure. Let me try and look for it. Highways. We inherited in the budget an item for, it's a 600 million project. This is the underpass at Arneta and Quezon Avenue. And there was a recalculation by DPWH as to how much it should cost. But the significant thing was, it was actually brought down to something like 2/3 of the price. From 600, it became a little less than 400 million, if I'm not mistaken. And that continues, no? Bridge that connects it's divided right in the middle by a river, and it's the rainy season. The western portion gets isolated. They have to go through Ignacia, and then Tarlac City to get to their poblacion. So that was brought in again below budget and in time. So
You took early hits on DPWH, right? In 2011, you went through all of the processes. Sorry, go ahead.
694.15 million was the budget that was initially allocated for the Quezon million.
Fantastic. So DPWH is a perfect example, the lack of spending, and that was the time we spoke then, and you said that you were cleaning up the process to make sure that it was corruption free, and now you have this, and yet it's being turned over to somebody who many people feel may have a conflict of interest, Mark Villar. How do you feel about this? I mean, what do you
Can I leave those questions to the Commission on Appointments, which is their function?
Okay, fair. So let me ask you, going back then to the other things. I mean, any other things you felt that you could have done a better job at? Things that you would do differently?
Well, discoveries throughout the years. For instance, the local water districts that provide a lot of water, especially beyond the areas where we have concessionaires. Quite a number are non-operational. But in general, they have very little financial capabilities. So that the sourcing of the water is primarily the aquifers, which brings about the problem of the soil sinks. There's a technical term.
The soil sinks. Groundwater.
Subsidence.
Yeah,
soil subsidence. Intrusion of salt water.
Sure.
Okay. So the idea is, if we pull several of them together and pull their resources together, then they can probably have they can have the wherewithal with government assistance of establishing their own reservoirs and use surface water, which we're visited by 20 typhoons a year. We can utilize the rates that they bring in, and we protect our land. No? And so, unfortunately, that was perhaps in the third year or the fourth year. Because you had to deal first with the flooding, with the rape of the watersheds, with the reform of MWS, so many different things. And normally, when you get to solve a problem, you will gain knowledge that tells you, oh, there's another segment to this.
Right. Everything is interlinked.
Yeah. But we try to address all of the links. But at some point, there are discoveries that happen in the course of governance and say, why should we do that? And sometimes it changes. For instance, the population, we started out with something like 2.08 population growth rate, and they said it has to be reduced. So I think we're now at 1.8 or 1.87, somewhere thereabouts. No? And after achieving that, now they say that to replenish our population, we have to maintain a 2% population growth rate. Thank you for changing the goalposts. Well, that's one. Of course, we're hoping that there's an acceleration in the judicial system in the country also.
So let me ask you about that. You know, one of the first risks you took, and you bet it was an all or nothing risk to try to impeach the former Chief Justice of the Supreme Court. Yes. When you did that, after it happened, you then did another risky move, which was you appointed the youngest justice and a woman, the first Supreme Court. I mean, this will reverberate for the next 2 decades. Why did you do it, and how is it coming along?
I think really very well with the appointment of this Chief Justice. What is the main reason?
Chief Justice Maria Lourdes Sereno.
The main reason being that give her or whoever it was that was going to steer the Supreme Court enough time to be able to effect the changes, the reforms that have always been wished for, but have never been done. No? For instance, and I'm still looking for all of the specifics that we delivered in the judicial reform. But one of the things that I remember was we have a very low conviction rate.
Yes.
13%. Yeah. You contrast that with Japan, which is approaching 100%. I think in America it's about, and I'm still looking for the notes, but something like 60 to 80%. So the fiscal studies The prosecutor studies the case, decides to bring the case to court, and loses 87% of the time.
Yeah.
So, how do you stop criminality when there's no certainty of punishment? No. So, I'll give you another.
Interesting.
I'll give you other nuts and bolts issues there. What has this Chief Justice done? No? For instance, we brought to our attention that I believe it's under the Build Up Rate Transfer Law,
Yes.
wherein government infrastructure cannot be stopped by zero. What is required is government exercise of eminence. It's something to that effect, so that we can continue the project and there is just compensation.
Right.
Okay. So what is the go around there? There was a DPWH, amongst others, was telling me that the new, so in effect, the infrastructure is put on hold. Stage 3 has been delayed because of that. The Express has also been delayed because of the issue of valuation.
Yeah.
So we brought attention to, and the spirit of the law is needed, but brought it to the attention of the Chief Justice. And there was a reminder to the lower courts that government projects shouldn't be delayed by that particular issue. That's one. Another instance in my memory right now is there were times when there was an RTC judge, kind of famous in our circles, who was ordering a co-equal branch, a co-equal court, an RTC, and RTCs do not order RTCs.
Yes.
No, it's a court of appeals. It's a Supreme Court that can order everybody around. So that was also brought to their attention. He said, yes, we are looking into this, and we also have him in our records already. We're also trying to help them. We supported them in their move towards the Bonifacio Global City.
Yes.
One of the things that it now sounds amusing, but it was really kind of pathetic, was the Supreme Court actually sits on land belonging to the University of the Philippines. And you have these walkways.
Yeah,
no?
yeah.
I said, what are these walkways for? There's to connect the UP Manila campus to each other, because there's this building that doesn't actually belong there. So you had one time when Edna Chura, one of the most junior, he actually had a bit apart the kitchen or something. You know? How do you afford a dignified work? Multiple Supreme Court to help them rent. Again, it was seen as a benefit that here is somebody who will have quite a big opportunity to really, I don't know if reset is the correct word to say it, the dispensation of justice, but really to be able to dramatically and drastically reform.
And in your calculation, it was worth the disruption in your justices, for example, and yes.
No. But there was so many other factors that were being weighed. No? I tried to hear all voices. No? Those who in favor of who, opposed to who, why are you in favor, why are you opposed. And at the end of the day, we felt that the best candidate at that point in time to become the Chief Justice was Chief Justice Sereno.
CCT is another thing that your administration pushed forward as new. The conditional cash transfer, which was in some ways fashioned after Brazil, but you made it your own, I guess. How would you gauge the way it performed? Did it do what you wanted it to do?
One of the things that really was pleasant was there was a study on the effects of CCT that says at least 7.7 million have been lifted out of the poverty line. Then,
so this is like pump priming the bottom. I mean, giving people who are poor the money they need.
If the idea is to capacitate and they are excluded from education, how do you actually capacitate? There is another number that is very interesting. In 2008, and I understand the study is done every 5 years, there was something like 2.8 million out-of-school children. You must remember during my mom's time was when they made basic education, elementary and high school free. But so many, the phenomenon of OSY came about, and people were so poor that they couldn't even afford transportation or the baon. And so the number in 2008, again, was 2.8. The number in 2013 had been reduced to 1.2 despite the growing population. So that I think is also further proof that the 85% attendance condition of the CCT is being met by most of the 4.6 million households that are being assisted. Then we expanded in 2014 to high school. We graduated about 330,000 the first batch, of which about 13,400 are honor students who, if probably been youth, or reduced again to menial labor. The two that be inspired, the two that spoke for all except the College of Engineering, which is a quota course.
Fantastic.
And to represented them and say, Angel will be out in the field when you have. She replies, matter of if it's all math. It's the easiest thing in the world. It's exactly that easy. But again, that optimism she exuded was lifted me up for quite a while.
Fantastic. I'm going to pick up a question from Twitter for you because it follows what we're talking about from 2019 poll.
Father had this famous line about all the benefits of our hard work. Would not prefer unsolicited advice.
So always, whether it's a small company or strengths and the weaknesses of the leader that determines the strengths and the success and failure of that. In your case, the strength seems to be here, what we've seen in the last 6 years, the fundamentals. You stick to the figures, you're looking at the numbers, you're looking at making sure that the schoolrooms, the hospitals, that all of these things are reach capacity, right? That they're actually built. Your weaknesses, I mean, we've seen them documented through the years, is your loyalty to your friends. In some instances, and most recently, Mama Sapano would be the one. I guess, how would you look back at that? In the case of Mama Sapano, is this...
In Mama Sapano, fundamentally, logging operations in the Caraga region. Number 3, amongst his, I learned afterwards, he was head of, that's not the phrase that they use. In that particular area, PNP was informing me about all of these operations even before he got. He was still in the world.
Yes.
Active elite things, operations. Whose language could understand, I guess, no? Who's that? Who in fact, and I made it. When I talk to them level. Now, ground commander, you have to did it. Studying it afterwards were very thick. The profession of operations.
Okay.
Percent of the moon. Where are they located? How many men? A coordination table, because that was the main issue.
Right.
You have to coordinate.
Right.
So I was presented with names, with offices, coordination table. Use TOT. Now, anyway, for 6 months before.
Yes.
The disposition of the armed forces units also was at least 6 months out of date.
Okay.
But when he presented to me, because I keep asking him a question, he'll present a particular slide. Fortunately, I managed to secure a copy afterwards. So the point is, did we have legitimate targets?
Right.
Yes. Is it risky? Yes. Could the risk be manageable? Yes. Did he follow orders? No.
Yes, yes.
Because I have to emphasize number of time, meaning days, so that the people, the equipment, everything is in place. One of the, for instances, surreptitiously in just that small group, our Green Berets, our special forces, operate in this area of Mindanao.
Right.
And they are tasked with extraction from hot zones.
Right.
But of course, they have to be told, we need you, or we
Yes,
might
yes.
need you, you should be ready. So, for the life of me, here is a two-star police general
Yes.
who graduated from the PMA, which has a motto of courage, integrity, and loyalty,
Yes.
who said yes, sir, twice to the idea of coordination, which was an order from me, and it was a legitimate order based on logic. No? And he agreed with all of it. But in the execution, he decided to go on his own route. Then starts blaming everybody else except him. So, did I, you know, I'd like to say, and I think that I was asked at some point in time, friendship stops when the country's interests are at stake. I'll be very specific. Junabaya is heading the DOTC.
Yeah.
There are a lot of issues in the DOTC. And, would it be better to find somebody else? One of the foremost things in my mind was, we used to talk about corruption. Not too many people, of all of the jargon, the technology, for that ZTE, where we were going to get all of those equipment, he was buying equipment from Israel. It was not their equipment. So, logically, to set up that network, we were at a very late stage.
That's what I'm getting. You trusted Junabaya.
In very rated fields.
Okay.
He was he was chair. Anything made by an imperfect being like man, by definition, is imperfect and can. But everybody having an opinion. Hopefully, you'll also go back to what are the conditions emanating.
Right.
One of the things that I really distinctly remember is, why are the trains bogging down? And he tells me, number one, sir, there was an overhaul that was carried in, I think, 2000, which is the 15 years. They did something, a minor overhaul, a major. Well, give you what he has contend with. And again, with respect, I'm not anybody at this point. I mean, the people who are fell on its side. Amongst the things, when you join bar, the bar connects the two people. Well, technically, they're fitted. So they showed us pictures. Some of them had two, some of them on that rail and one on this rail. I asked, was the deputy general manager who happened to be an accountant by trade. Sabi ko, I want engineers. So we waited for the engineers. So I asked them, when you what are the limitations when when I was not getting any answers? Attention to it, and the general was out of the country. General manager back actually did.
You looked at, tried to mitigate them.
Yeah.
No.
Change. Some that didn't change. Si Rico Pudo. But he wasn't performing what he should be doing. Unfortunately, I had to let go. Passed on.
Yes.
But a lot of the
Well, impact on the BBI huge.
yes.
Could you have done more?
When the case, like 6 infantry
Yes.
that had operational control, the MILF,
Yes.
even if the people are not aware of all of these, they remind them. Star General, who I'm sure I promoted at least to the 2-star rank, and probably to the 1-star, would do the chief executive while precisely thinking that I will not follow this order. Logical order is optional.
Rappler, thank you for the questions. We'll try. Let me bring you back. Do you think you could have done more to expert when we were talking about lessons learned from Marro's loss, I guess?
Number one, yung Maro has, and I prevailed upon to finish the responsibility of addressing people's needs now. And then personal ambition. So the old-fashioned phrase is teaching. Why are we doing this? So parang part is actually doing the governance part.
Yes.
Perhaps we could have done a little bit better with saying, these are the hindrances to it. These are, this is what we want to achieve. These are the obstacles that have to be met. These are the resources that we have. These are the things that can be expected this time. In a sense, I really wonder whether that should be our function, 50% explaining everything and 50% doing. Now, what you take time in terms of the explaining portion is lost in the doing portion. So would we have served our people better by attending to propaganda more than doing the governance?
Interesting.
And
your lesson, would you? Would you do it differently?
No.
No. You would. Yeah.
That which is our people.
Mr. President, to follow up that same question, though, you were
Meeting that lasted until 2:30 in the morning. Tried to get everybody together.
Yes.
Was not successful. Towards then, I was prevailed upon to try again.
Yes.
By quarters who are not affiliated to any of our political parties. I tried again. There was another one, the two actually na religious who prevailed upon me to try and get them together. The one was really, parang, please lang, sige na, subukan mo na, baka sakali. This was like the last week of the campaign. And I replied na, I don't think anybody is predisposed to giving way.
Yes.
Please try. I tried. I might have looked ridiculous. I might have looked naive. I might have, let's see, baka naman these persons are being used by God to deliver a message. I tried. Obviously, it failed.
Yes.
At least we maintained communication.
Yes, yes. Did Duterte win? What does that show about the Filipino public today, the Filipino voters?
Well, again, the differentiation.
Yes.
I am different. Okay? Again, very, very masterful way of the campaign. Am I running? Am I not running? Okay? And all the attendant. So we really have to hand it to him, to them. They really mounted that was the right tone, the right messaging, at the right time.
There's also anger. I mean, we see it all the time now. What do you make of this anger?
Can I ask, how confident are you that what you see on social media is representative, as opposed to the concept of truth?
So what we've seen is a pretty organized campaign, but they seem to be real people. And organized, very organized in messaging, organized in approach, but the anger of the real people who they've mobilized is there.
Some quarters would disagree.
Would disagree. Well, I guess if you think about it, it also mirrors the anger in the United States. My own theory is that social media has allowed everybody a voice, and that the 99% who don't have or who don't feel like they...
But everybody asking about me, there's so many.
Yes, yes.
So organized volunteer would not have that much number of people right away.
We've also seen from statistical surveys, and we saw it in the vote, right? So if that's the case, I think part of what seems to be driving it is anger. I mean, so what do you do with that? How do you look at it, and how would you ask Filipinos to deal with this today, so that the fissures don't open up?
Leaders, regardless of what, should ensure that
Yeah.
perhaps the dialogue in a civil dialogue, regardless of the record would bear us out that we keep on that it was successful. The very talk about traffic. How big a phenomenon is that here? And of course, everybody, especially in the campaign period, had their 2 cents. Referring to it's either 20 or 14 and 15. Actually, was 630,000 plus 1.2 million cycles for.
Oh wow.
Now, when you go to a mall, look at the on the streets. Now, if you what so even the better Thailand when it's who were in pickups, when there's infrastructure that you need, you have to put Guadalupe, which has ability to withstand 7.2 earthquake. So there has to be a retrofit, but you cannot close it down. No?
Yes.
It's over. I think it extends from the university. We realigned it to all of these warehouses and factories. Then you have an oppositor.
Yes.
And okay, let's put it. Somebody will oppose. Why are you not putting it all up? And nobody wants it. Nobody wants it in concerned residents. Then are trying to get as good, if not.
Brings the higher GDP brings its own problems. But
If you will go back to my speech, inauguration with Skyway Stage 3 I the dust, the noise, and obviously I cannot go to what are the hardware stores, Ace Hardware Store, and say, give me this elevated road network to be installed overnight. And after that speech, there was very muted criticism.
yes.
And now, siguro one of the presidential candidates was saying, there should have been foresight, there should have been less of this infra. No? And, yung Skyway Stage 3 and the other one by a company called, I think it's MPIC, are both variations of the Metro Manila Expressway promised by Mr. Marcos in the mid to late 70s.
Okay. Okay.
It's not there, people complain. When you're trying to put it in, people complain. Then I guess, I just remember during my mom's time when they had all of those flyovers built.
Yeah.
They did to Ping Jesus. And at the end of the day, when it was finished and no stoplights from, EDSA then was kind of, wow, no stoplights from Makati to Quezon City. Yeah. Did anybody praise Ping Jesus? I'm hard-pressed to find a single source of praise for this visionary work. And he was, at that point in time, and he went, no talk, no which led to no act. And only time he had parcel of it. This infrastructure, but
Up that our GDP is high. China and our new leader, our incoming president, seems to take. How do you see this playing out on?
I do believe he's a patriot. I think once he gets all of
and maintain policy?
You know, I don't want to say
From one all the way to winning the vice president. Have a cabinet position.
same thing I think was when she was running. I sa pagpapapat
Yeah.
pagmana ako, pagsisinungaling. You know, when she said in one of the debates, may the best woman win. Who has ever had a strong, and of course we share the same belief that at the end of the day, it's the people's support that makes or breaks us.
Do you think the Philippine
In very real sense, no? You probably had stories of those number of Filipinos leaving. How many stories do you have in a year of that? And now we have a
Yes.
the number is anywhere from 400,000 of the estimated 10 million OFWs to the country. And so I assume that in one of the being broad,
Who come back for sure?
yung apathy
Yes.
that people had, very vocal on various fronts, says that communities, they really will excel. Now, having said that, everything we've done, able to participate in all the opportunities that are happening.
I mean, what's next? But what's next for you?
Dictatorship, paano ba nababawi? Di ba? Para normally, bloody revolution. Examples, no? And countless. Now, para to them, my mom stepped down. About a year, and I had the. So, at the end of the day, I'm sure, no, if fulfilled, I believe, and I chose not to do it, I wouldn't be able to live it. Going all of the BS to get here while in here. I'd like to look forward to a quiet life.
Before we end, on social media, we'll try to get them to you. And I see Sunny later on. Started with how this present changed you later. Aside from
I guess being present, but we like to think God had a part in it. And to now, parang there was a dakilang alala referred to in every is that, again, it goes back to, I won't say I wasn't apprehensive about some of the issues that we had to face. No? But being confident, people are there, present the facts to them. They count on their support.
with President Benigno Aquino, just a day and 3 weeks before the end of his 6 years in office. If you have more questions, put it in. Hashtag Rappler Talk. We'll be working to get you some answers. Thanks so much for joining us. I'm Maria Ressa. Thank you so much. But you didn't